She looked like a nuisance, just another civilian with outdated ID and a torn bag. Private James Danner sneered, ripped through her belongings, and let the cameras capture his authority. Evelyn Shaw said nothing, until the Ghost Recon patch gleamed from her pocket. They thought she was irrelevant. What they didn't know? Shaw once commanded the Shadow Operations Unit and built the very security grid Danner bragged about. Stick around, because when Sergeant Kells whispered "stand down," it was already too late. The breach had begun. And the most dangerous enemy is the one you tried to humiliate. Let us know where you're watching from and what time you found this. We read every single comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. Private James Danner's fingers whitened around his M4 as he stared at the woman's ID, her composure setting off every alarm in his military-trained mind. The Ghost Recon patch shouldn't have been there. That unit was officially dead, buried in redacted files and Pentagon meetings. Yet here she stood, Evelyn Shaw, radiating a deadly calm that made his throat tighten. "Papers seem expired," Private James Danner declared, voice carrying across the checkpoint with forced authority. The setting sun cast long shadows across the concrete barriers, and his body camera's red light blinked steadily, documenting every second. Civilian phones peeked through the chain-link fence, their recording lights like accusing eyes. The woman's silence felt like a coiled spring. Private James Danner's hand instinctively brushed his security badge, the symbol of his authority, freshly polished this morning. Now it felt heavy, almost burning against his chest. Through his earpiece, the chatter about drone interference grew more urgent. Something was very wrong. "Sergeant Kells!" Private James Danner barked, desperately seeking backup. "Ghost Recon ID at checkpoint 3. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the fear he fought to suppress. The woman's eyes never left his face, studying him with the calculated patience of a predator. Ghost alert flashed across a civilian's phone screen, and Private James Danner's stomach lurched. They were trending already, the confrontation spreading across social media like wildfire. His grip tightened on his weapon, the familiar metal failing to provide its usual comfort. "You don't belong here anymore," Private James Danner sneered, trying to reclaim control. "Ghost Recon is dead." The words hung in the air like smoke, but the woman's slight smile sent ice through his veins. "Private Danner," Sergeant Kells' voice cut through the tension. "That's Evelyn Shaw, Shadow Operations Commander. She has override authority." The revelation hit like a physical blow, and Private James Danner felt his world tilt sideways. Will his career survive this confrontation? The question burned in his mind as he realized his mistake. The security badge seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. Type Ghost if you've ever felt your confidence shatter in seconds. The sun disappeared behind the base's buildings, leaving Private James Danner in growing darkness. His earpiece erupted with urgent communications about security breaches across the perimeter. In his gut, he knew this was just the beginning of a very long night, and his badge would offer no protection from what was coming. Through the gathering gloom, Evelyn Shaw's eyes held a promise of chaos, and Private James Danner's empire of authority began to crumble. The checkpoint cameras whirred, recording his descent, as #GhostAlert exploded across social media. His hands trembled slightly as he lowered his weapon, finally understanding that he was facing something far beyond his comprehension or control. Private James Danner stares at the base computer's harsh glow, his fingers drumming an anxious rhythm against his holster. The warnings about Ghost Recon's dissolution flash across the screen, each one striking deeper at his certainty. He'd always taken pride in being the checkpoint's strictest enforcer, But now that pride curdles into something darker. "Security breach at Grid 7, the computer chirps, and Private Danner's hand instinctively tightens on his weapon. More malfunctioning drones, just like the woman Evelyn Shaw had warned. The thought of her name makes his jaw clench. He'd dismissed her so quickly, so arrogantly when she'd tried to explain. The security footage plays on loop. His own smug face as he'd threatened to detain her, the subtle shift in her stance that he'd ignored. Now, reviewing it for the 5th time, Private Danner sees what his ego had blinded him to. The precision in her movements, the tactical awareness in her eyes. Every frame screams "Operator," just as his gut had whispered. Private Danner pulls up his personnel files, discovering a pattern he'd been too proud to notice. 3 other Ghost Recon operatives had attempted contact in the past month. He'd turned them all away, following protocols with zealous righteousness. Each incident preceded a security breach. "Sir?" A junior officer appears at his shoulder. "The drone malfunctions. They're spreading. Engineering can't explain it." Private Danner dismisses him with a sharp wave, but the words burrow deep. His training manual sits heavy on his desk, its rules suddenly seeming inadequate against the growing chaos. He'd built his career on following those regulations to the letter, becoming the base's most notorious stickler. The distant hum of malfunctioning drones grows louder, a mechanical chorus mocking his bureaucratic devotion. Private Danner's hand moves to his badge, fingers tracing the edges that once felt so solid, so meaningful. Now it feels like a weight, dragging him toward a truth he'd rather not face. A memory surfaces. His first day at the checkpoint, his commanding officer's words. "Sometimes, Danner, the biggest threat isn't breaking the rules, it's following them too blindly." He'd dismissed it as weakness then. Now, watching another drone crash on the security feed, those words taste like prophecy. The base's asset tracking system blinks red. 50 million in military equipment, vulnerable to whatever's coming. Private Danner's stomach churns as he realizes they're facing something far beyond standard protocols, beyond his precious rulebook's capacity to handle. Type "rules fail" if you've ever realized your certainty was your weakness, flashes across his mind, a bitter acknowledgement of his transformation from confident enforcer to doubting soldier. Private Danner's inner voice echoes through the quiet control room. "I built my fortress out of regulations, wrapped myself in protocols like armor. But what if I've been the weak link all along? What if my perfect record is just perfect blindness?" The question hangs heavy in the air, unanswered. The night stretches on, each passing hour bringing new warnings, new malfunctions. Private Danner watches his orderly world unravel, his certainty crumbling like sand. The distant sound of rotors grows louder, a countdown to a reckoning he can no longer ignore. Danner's fall begins trending on base communications, spreading through the ranks like wildfire. Private Danner's rigid adherence to protocol, once his pride, now marks him as the man who might have compromised everything by refusing to listen. As dawn approaches, Private Danner faces the ultimate realization. His greatest weapon had become his greatest weakness. In trying to be the perfect soldier, he'd forgotten how to be an effective one. The weight of his badge feels suddenly hollow, a symbol of authority turned burden of blind obedience. Private James Danner stared at the security monitors, his hands trembling as another base alarm pierced the control room's silence. The screens before him, once showcasing the military's finest security systems, now displayed only static and error messages. His perfectly pressed uniform, a symbol of order and control just hours ago, felt suffocating as chaos spread through the base like wildfire. Every crackle of his earpiece sent a jolt through his spine. Security breach in Sector 7. Drone systems offline. Communication grid failing. The voices blended into a symphony of panic that made his throat tighten. Private James Danner watched helplessly as the $50 million defense network he'd boasted about earlier crumbled before his eyes. Through the main gate's camera feed, he could still see her, Evelyn Shaw, standing there with that infuriating calm. The Ghost Recon patch on her worn jacket seemed to glow in the emergency lights, a reminder of everything he'd dismissed as obsolete. Each time the camera caught her slight smile, Private James Danner felt his earlier arrogance turn to ash in his mouth. "Sir, we've lost control of the eastern perimeter," a junior officer reported, his voice cracking. Private James Danner barely heard him, transfixed by the realization that every security measure he'd implemented, every modern solution he'd championed, was being systematically dismantled by someone he'd treated like an unwelcome relic. The cold sweat trickled down his neck as he remembered his sneering words. "Ghost Recon? That outdated program? We have drones now, ma'am. Real security." The memory made his stomach turn. His fingers brushed against his security clearance badge, once a source of pride, now feeling more like a mark of shame. The base's most advanced drone, a $2.5 million marvel of technology, crashed into the perimeter fence, sending sparks into the darkening sky. Private James Danner flinched at the sound, his mind racing through possible solutions, each one evaporating like mist. The invisible enemy wasn't some foreign threat. It was their own arrogance, personified in his dismissal of Shaw and everything she represented. "Sir," his earpiece crackled again, "we're detecting unauthorized access to the main server room." Private James Danner's blood ran cold. That room housed enough classified information to end careers. His career. He watched Shaw on the monitor, still standing motionless at the gate, yet somehow orchestrating this technological dismantling with devastating precision. Type hubris if you've ever underestimated someone to your own detriment. As darkness fell over the base, Private James Danner faced the ultimate irony. Their only hope of salvaging this crisis lay with the very operative he'd tried to turn away. His security badge felt heavy against his chest as he realized that sometimes the newest technology wasn't the answer. Sometimes the old ghosts knew best. Through the static of his failing communications system, he heard Shaw's voice, clear and composed. "Ready to reconsider my clearance, Private Danner?" The words cut through his pride like a knife, leaving him with the bitter taste of crow and the growing certainty that his perfect world of digital security was built on quicksand. His hands shook as he reached for the base-wide communication system, knowing his next words would echo through his career forever. "This is Private James Danner. Grant full access to Ghost Recon Operative Shaw. Authorization granted." The words felt like surrender, but as he watched millions in technology failing around him, he realized this surrender might be their only salvation. The security badge that had given him such authority now felt like a weight dragging him down. Private James Danner unclipped it slowly, staring at his reflection in its polished surface. In it, he saw not the confident security officer of 6 hours ago, but a man learning the hardest lesson of his career. Sometimes the future needs the past, and pride comes before a spectacular fall. Private James Danner's fingers trembled on his M4 as he watched Shaw approach the checkpoint, her movements carrying the unmistakable precision of Ghost Recon training. The setting sun caught his badge, casting dancing reflections that seemed to mock his wavering resolve. 15 years of unwavering adherence to protocol warred with the growing certainty that this moment demanded something different. "Ma'am, if you can help." The words scraped his throat like broken glass, each syllable a betrayal of everything he'd been trained to believe. His weapon lowered inch by inch, the metal warm from the day's heat. Around him, the checkpoint hummed with tension, security cameras swiveling to capture his insubordination. Shaw's slight nod sent a ripple of relief through his rigid posture. Private James Danner felt his world shift as she moved past him, her expertise evident in every calculated step. His badge, once a symbol of unquestioning obedience, now felt heavy with new meaning. "Sir, what are you doing?" came the sharp whisper from Sergeant Kells. "Protocol demands—" "Protocol isn't always right," Private James Danner responded, surprising himself with the steady conviction in his voice. The security feeds captured everything: his lowered weapon, Shaw's passage. The moment trust overcame fear. Civilian phones appeared like fireflies in the gathering dusk, recording what would soon become a viral sensation. Within minutes, Hatch Danner Decides began trending on social media. Private James Danner watched his career flash before his eyes as notifications exploded across screens. Military police would arrive soon, demanding explanations. But as he stood at his post, watching Shaw disappear into the compound, where 50 million in military assets lay vulnerable, he felt an unfamiliar peace. "Drop 1 if you believe in choosing what's right over what's easy," scrolled across screens as the footage spread. His badge caught one final ray of sunlight, and Private James Danner squared his shoulders. Sometimes the bravest stand wasn't taken with a raised weapon, but with a lowered one. The next few hours would determine if his trust had been well placed, or if he'd just committed the biggest mistake of his career. The checkpoint's floodlights flickered on, casting harsh shadows as the sun disappeared completely. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Officer James Danner stands at attention in the base commander's office, my polished badge catching the morning light one final time. 24 hours ago, I would have sworn this badge made me invincible. Now, watching the security footage of Shaw's masterful infiltration replay on the commander's screen, I understand the weight of my arrogance. "The systems are more secure than ever," the tech analyst reports, her voice tinged with admiration. "Whatever Shaw did, it's like having an invisible shield around our entire network." My throat tightens as I remember my sneering challenge. "Your Ghost Recon credentials expired with the program, Shaw." The timestamp on the footage shows 03:22, the moment when Shaw's fingers flew across the keyboard, implementing protections that our best IT teams couldn't match. My own voice echoes from the speakers. "You don't belong here." How wrong I'd been. The hashtag #DannerLearns still trends, a digital monument to my humbling. I reach for my badge, the metal cold against my palm. "Sir," I address the commander, "I understand now. Security isn't about who has the right papers or wears the right uniform. It's about who acts with wisdom rather than authority." The commander nods, his expression grave. "Private Danner, your suspension starts today. But more importantly, this incident will be used in training. Sometimes the best security comes from knowing when to step aside." A notification pings on the commander's screen. Another million views on the footage of Shaw effortlessly bypassing our impenetrable systems, while I postured and threatened. The irony burns. In trying to protect our assets, my rigid adherence to protocol nearly cost us everything. My badge lands with a final, resonant click on the commander's desk. "Sir, I request permission to personally thank Shaw, if they ever return." They won't, he replies, a knowing smile playing at his lips. The best guardians operate in shadows, Danner. Your badge will be waiting in the security training center, behind glass. A reminder that true security comes from wisdom, not credentials. Walking out, I pass the drone control center. The systems hum with perfect efficiency, protected by invisible hands. My viral moment of shame has become something more. A lesson in humility that might save future officers from my mistakes. Share this video if you've learned that sometimes being right means admitting when you're wrong. Type wisdom, power, if this story changed how you think about true security. The military base continues its operations, stronger for my failure. And somewhere out there, Shaw moves like a ghost through digital shadows, protecting those who once rejected their help. My badge, now a teaching tool, gleams behind glass. A testament to the day I learned that true authority comes not from stopping threats, but recognizing allies in unexpected places. Drop 2 in the comments if you believe sometimes the best security comes from knowing when to step aside.